Hello everyone, including you armchair costume designers, historians, and polyglots. Get ready in the comments section because this video has it all. A review of a beloved historical character, but with an updated perspective. Lots of foreign words and strange pronunciations, modern costume techniques and fabrics used in a 19th century setting. Hold on to your hats. Here we go. The Empress or Die Kaiserin is a 2022 German historical drama series on the life of Empress Elisabeth of Austria. This series was released on Netflix on the 29th of September 2022. In this video, I will be doing an analysis of the costumes by Swiss costume designer Gabriela Reumer. Before we proceed, there will be spoilers for all 6 episodes of Season 1. All of the interviews, except for the costume couture one, have been translated from German into English, so I might occasionally get something wrong. I happened upon this show just after it came out, and I recognized the actor who plays Cece's mom from the excellent German show Dark. I watched it with English subtitles, but my sister watched it with the English dub and said it was really good. It was a nice change of pace from all of the fantasy dramas that I've been watching lately. Now, I didn't know anything about the life of Empress Elisabeth going into the show, but I could tell from the costumes alone that liberties were taken. Now, having dug in a bit more, story-wise, this is a fictional telling of a time in history with many of the historical elements of the Habsburg Empire being mashed together. They hone in on the spirited heroine trope and the love story between Cece and Franz Josef. Some have compared the show to Bridgerton meets The Crown, but personally, I think the tone feels like Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette. Now, if you're a history purist, this show will lively drive you batty. There are the usual suspects: no chemises worn under corsets, corsets worn as outer garments, a lack of headdresses on the women, Cece wearing contemporary sunglasses, the tight lacing trope, etc., etc. Marie Antoinette also had many anachronisms as well. In the hair and makeup department, the wigs range from contemporary, like with Joseph Helena in Bavaria, or high-end design theatrical stylings of the Countess Sophie Esterhazy and the other countesses. Even some of the styles of hair and makeup look like they are right out of the 80s. But beyond that, there is a pretty sophisticated costume design happening here. The show itself is just gorgeous, with all of the beautiful exteriors and interiors of the palace that have a painterly quality. Now, it all begins with the palette. Showrunner Katrine Gabby said, "How do we make this historical, somewhat outdated look fresher and more modern?" The design team opted to remove the color red from the palette, while green was only used outside in nature. So instead, there is a lot of black, gray, white, and shades of pink, mauve, rose, and yellow. A contemporary designer, Gabriela Reumer, didn't know if she was the right person for the job. She told German Vogue that she saw it as a challenge. She came to it with a modern approach, saying, "This is a big project and not easy to implement. You have to adapt a bit to the present and adapt the material for today's eyes because a lot of things just don't work anymore." Because Elizabeth was a famous living figure, there are many portraits and photos taken of her over her lifetime, and I discovered some of her costumes in museums in Vienna, such as her coronation gown, which at this point in the series hasn't happened yet. Many of the gowns were specially created for Empress Elisabeth, including her coronation gown and diamond stars gown by famous Parisian couturier Charles Frederick Worth. For her research, the costume designer visited the locations at Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace, where she also examined some of Cece's dresses, Cece's hunting lodge, and Hofburg Imperial Palace. She said that she read a lot of books, but also looked at couture designs and took inspiration from Christian Dior and Alexander McQueen. She said, "I'm actually very minimalist when it comes to my costumes." In my observations, and with the corset in particular, it appears that the costume designer pushed the silhouette further away from the setting of 1854 to the later part of the century. Reumer said in a Vogue interview, At that time, the crinoline, a kind of hoop skirt, was round like a ball and gave the woman a doll-like look. But for me, that didn't fit the story of Cece, this woman who emancipated herself and freed herself from oppression and power games. She said, "I changed the shape of the crinoline, which also became fashionable around 1870. Flatter in the front and a bit more elliptical in the back. I used this form for Cece and Sophie." Reumer said that Cece's overbearing mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, embodies a power man's costumes and always wanted tight, high-necked clothes. She added that, and then she got bigger and stronger in the costumes. Now, a total of 2,000 costumes were used for this series. Many of the background players' outfits were sourced from costume houses in London and Rome. I thought it was really interesting that they rented many of the costumes for the lower classes from Martin Scorsese's 2002 film Gangs of New York, housed at Torelli in Rome, which Reumer said depict a similar time and already had a nice patina. The principal character costumes were either custom-made or remade from existing pieces. Reumer said that she discovered some individual pieces in London, like lace blouses and capes that were in good condition. For the bespoke items, Reumer turned to 2 costume couturiers to bring her designs to life: her wardrobe master in Berlin and production workshop Costumes Couture in Vienna, who made almost all of Elisabeth's and Sophie's dresses. She said, "Michaela Meyer at Costumes Couture also makes many evening dresses for the Vienna Opera Ball. We have the cancellation of the ballroom season due to COVID," Meyer tells me in an interview. "We had more space in our studio shop because it officially was closed down for a long period of time, and we could use the whole space for working on the dresses." Reumer said that her wardrobe master in Berlin sews historically accurate, but for this reason, it can take a month to create a dress. Meanwhile, Costume Couture has a modern approach that is much faster and can turn around a dress in about 2 weeks, depending upon its complexity. Michaela Meyer said, "I love to drape and work more free than other designers, and especially costume designers do. The outcome is not 100% historical, which was also not the wish from Gabriela." Monica Ferrari Krieger, Meyer's business partner at Costume Couture, was more involved in creating the tops, jackets, and blouses, while Meyer was more into the skirts, which she said I draped on the dummy, leaving the crinoline as a base. She let the fabric lead the way, saying, "I like to work with the material itself and what it asks for. That means the actual process is very creative, and sometimes I don't even know myself how exactly the result will look like." According to Reumer, many of Sophie's fabrics were manufactured in Vienna. Meyer said the Costume Couture created about 30 to 40 costumes for the series, with Cece's wedding gown being the most challenging according to the entire team. Gabriela Reumer said, "We wanted to create something depressing and show her wedding day is a horror. The whole kingdom comes and wants something from her. The costume should be high-necked and tight. We made a kind of lace turtleneck and a huge crinoline." She said that the lace for the gown was originally embroidered in Austria in Vorarlberg. Of this costume, which had a skirt circumference of 167 centimeters or almost 6 feet, Michaela Meyer tells me there was also so much material involved, so many layers of tulle and embroidery. The wedding gown took about 4 weeks to make. Meyer said there was a lot of handwork included, especially hand-embroidered. That work was hard to calculate and took much longer than we thought it would take. The wedding gown and Sophie's striped gown were her favorite costumes in the series, and she says, because it was done all freely draped on the dummy, the way I usually work in my couture work. While it's never mentioned in Reumer's interview with Vogue, I noticed also that there were a few Eastern influences. I don't have a picture of it, but at one point Cece is wearing a gorgeous embroidered nightrobe, and then over her nightgown she dons this lovely tokori, a jacket that would be worn with the traditional Korean woman's hanbao. While I loved all of the men's and women's costumes in the show, my personal favorites are the gold blouse with the contrasting mauve skirt and cincher belt. The scene where she is walking through the garden with the countesses, just wow! And my other favorite is her black and white silkscreen printed gown that she wears with the white capelet in the season finale. I enjoyed the show and I'm looking forward to season 2, but as of this recording, it hasn't been confirmed. Fingers crossed. Let me know in the description what your favorite costumes in the Empress were. And thank you to Costume Couture for allowing me to share your close-up photos of the costumes in the video. And as always, thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next video.